and welcome to Design and Business Conversations for Creatives. I'm Cheyney, and today I am sharing with you my journey to being a traditionally published author illustrator. In July this year, I officially became a published author illustrator, and I can not tell you how surreal and amazing this is. It is like a dream come true. It has been on my bucket list for years to write and illustrate a children's book. I actually brainstormed some ideas back in the day when I was at uni, which was like 10 years ago now, and then while I was traveling abroad, my brother had written a story and asked me to illustrate it, and I created, I think, 18 spreads of watercolor illustrations. I really enjoyed the process of creating artwork in watercolor. However, it isn't my natural style or medium to work with. I did complete the drawings and I'm really happy with them, and I shared them with my brother, and they're now in his hands to do whatever he wishes with. It's a really beautiful story, and my brother wrote it with all the kids that we know from our family and friend circles, using their names, and it was about a little boy who went to show and tell and didn't have anything to talk about, and then his dad took him snorkeling and he saw all these beautiful New Zealand native fish, and yeah, he then had lots to talk about. But anyway, after creating artwork for my brother, I kind of parked the idea of writing and illustrating another book, and one summer my good friends Erin and Stephen, they were going away and they had asked me if I could look after their cat Minnie. Minnie is this smoky grey cat with big green eyes, and Erin, my friend, gave me a key to her house. It was a key with a pineapple on it, and I fed Minnie. And after that, for whatever reason, I don't even know why, I can't explain it, I just had a pull to write a story about it. When I was a little girl, I really struggled with reading. It actually turned out that I have a condition which is called Irlens Syndrome, which was diagnosed by an optician when I was, I must have been maybe 13 years old. And Irlens Syndrome is a visual perceptive processing disorder. And what happens to me is sometimes the contrast of black words on a white page can be too much, and the words jump around, and I had a real problem with reading in primary school. I really loved books and story time at home with mum before bed, but I would always find myself drawn to the interactive books and the books with really simple, clean graphics. The books I enjoyed were ones like The Jolly Postman, where you could open up the letters, and I think it was kind of my attempt at getting around reading but engaging with books. In primary school, I had some really awful experiences where I had to read aloud to the classroom, and I remember this one time we had these storybooks in New Zealand called journals, and they were, oh, it's a big B. Where did that come from? Anyway, I had these journals, and on the front of the journal was an image, but inside of the journal was maybe like 5 to 10 different short stories. And I remember a teacher had me read one out to the class, and I was concentrating so hard on the reading and getting the words right and in order, I didn't comprehend any of it. I just have to move this bee, hang on. The bee is now outside and flying free. Anyway, where was I? Well, I didn't comprehend any of the story, and my teacher closed the book and said, okay, what is the story about? And I said, and I looked on the cover of the journal, and on the cover there was like a UFO, so I just kind of made up this little story where I was like, it's about a UFO in outer space, and there was some aliens. And the teacher just looked at me like blankly, because word for word I could read the story, but none of it sunk in, and I was just concentrating so hard on not making a fool out of myself in front of the class. And it turned out that the story was about wolves. Just anyway, from then on I had a reading aid, And in high school, I had some extra classes that helped me with my English papers. I managed to be able to get through English classes kind of without detection by asking students, what the book was about. So we had these like reading groups, and I'd be like, oh yeah, so what's that about? Oh, okay, and what's that character? And what did that character do? And so I could write an essay fine, but I really struggled with the reading. So anyway, long story short, I wanted to create a story that was for the little kids like me who struggled with reading but was interested in reading and could engage with a book. But I also wanted something that would encourage more parent participation in reading as well, because that was something that I also really liked as a child, when I would read to mum or mum would read to me, and that connection is something that I think is really important. After feeding my friend's cat Minnie, I had, as I said earlier, I had this pull to write this book, and I just kind of went for it. I get in these creative zones into a bit of a hole where I just do, and it's all I can think about, and I'm not really satisfied until it's out there. So yeah, wrote this story. The graphics came first and then the writing kind of followed. I have the first edition here. So it started off being Feeding Neptune, and Neptune was kind of in the middle of our cat Bossy, who is large and in charge, and tabby tuxedo type cat, English short hair I think, never really known what she is, and Minnie, who is a grey cat with green eyes. So Neptune, when I first wrote the book and it was Feeding Neptune, was a mixture between Minnie's colouring and our cat Bossy's figure. I have here the first edition of Feeding Neptune. I had printed it out in colour and bound it like with a spiral binding so I could see what it looked like and how it worked. And a lot of these graphics from this very first edition actually are in Thank You for Feeding Freckle, which is the book which I'm leading up to, so I'll share that soon. This is Feeding Neptune, and the first page is still very similar to the actual published book, and so is the second page with the maze. Excuse me. Even the third page, so very similar. I can hold it up later on in the video. I'll hold it up next to the actual final so you can see. The key with the pineapple key ring, which is Erin and Stephen's house key, which was inspired by my experience of feeding Minnie. That features in the first edition. I did go on to make the book turn upside down. So when you turn the page, then it would command you to turn the book upside down. And that was something that I ended up having to axe out. It didn't quite work, but it is definitely an idea that I'm banking for later for a series for my new book. After I had illustrated and written Feeding Neptune to a point where I was relatively happy with it, I sent it off to a children's book author here in New Zealand called Jennifer Beck, and she kindly did what's called a manuscript assessment for me. She's a professional writer. She's published heaps of kids' books, and she was able to look at my story from an outside perspective and give me some tips on how to tweak it to make it better. This is when the title changed. We had a discussion about the title, and she had suggested that Feeding Neptune made her think of a story that has to do with being under the sea. I'm unsure if that's because Neptune is the god of the sea, or it was close to Finding Nemo. And that's what I thought too. So we had a discussion, and that's when Feeding Neptune then turned to Feeding Freckle. You can see with the evolution of this how it gets more sophisticated, and that the book constantly evolved, and there was a lot of work in the background to get it to where it is today. The next edition, Feeding Freckle, was a lead on from Feeding Neptune, and I spent a little bit more money to get it on a thicker card so it looks a little bit better, but same again, spiral bound, just so I could see how the graphics kind of interacted on the page side by side. I sent Feeding Freckle to a lot of my friends with young children and family members who also have young children, so they could try it out and I could get a sense of how children were relating to the story. I had some really great feedback from sharing it with friends and family. So one of my friends, she was saying that her little girl is so cute. Her little girl would take the book into bed, and she was obsessed with Freckle, and she would take the book into the bed and read it to all her teddies. So when my friend would leave the room, she could hear her 3-year-old daughter reading Freckle to all her toys and teddies. And it's so cute. And then my auntie, I gave her a book and she read it to her grandchildren, and it kind of turned into a little bit of a routine where they would come home, they would come to Nana's house and have an ice block and read Freckle, and it was being asked for and engaged with. So of course that made me really happy. And I tuned the story a couple of times based on their feedback, and then I started submitting to publishers. Dun dun dun. What a process. So I went into this whole thing very naively. I haven't heard of anyone in circles that I run in publishing a book, so I thought it was going to be relatively easy. And after sending it to a couple of publishers here in New Zealand, I did things properly. I had a proper manuscript, like typed out, double spaced. I sent in copies of the book. I wrote my cover letter, pitched to that particular publisher, which I'd done lots of research on, and I sent it to quite a few publishers within Auckland and ghosted. I could hear the crickets. I am a graphic designer, I run my own business, and not getting back to people is just not an option for me. And I came to realize that this is quite standard in the publishing industry, and it really tested my patience. Anyway, after not hearing from publishers and then hearing from the odd one, I decided that maybe I should look into getting a literary agent. I did more research on how to become a traditionally published author, and again, rejection. Sorry, we're not taking on any authors, and it was just rejection after rejection. I did have some really lovely Kiwi publishing houses get back to me with some feedback saying, hey, look, we love the book, but it doesn't fit with our brand, or we love the book, but have you considered changing the cat into like a New Zealand bird, for example? And that wasn't really an issue for me. I've been a cat lover my entire life. I have been researching cats since I was a little girl. I'll overlay some pictures over this of myself as a little girl with cats, and you can see that it's kind of a common theme throughout my life is owning cats and aggressively loving cats. So I understand cats and I've been researching them, so creating a cat character was quite easy for me. I love New Zealand native birds, but I don't have the same connection that I do with cats, so that wasn't an option for me. I think at last count I had 22 rejections from New Zealand publishing houses. I was chatting one day at a party to one of my friends who works for a publishing house. I said to her, I've written this book, I don't know what to do, it keeps getting rejected, I think it's really good, the kids are responding well to it, I want to get it out there, I don't want to self-publish because I don't know anything about the industry. And she asked me if I had tried Over the Ditch and if I had heard of a publishing company, 5 Mail. So I looked up 5 Mile and sent them an email. Nikki, the editor, got back to me straight away and she said, we love it, give me some time. So this was the first time that I kind of felt, okay, this could go somewhere. It is August 2020, and I think this would have been in around, I want to say October. October last year. They got back to me and they offered me a preliminary contract, which I swiftly accepted, and then a couple of months later, the final contract came through. So I signed the contract, and then it was time to work closely with Nikki, the editor, and in this process, Feeding Freckle then became Thank You for Feeding Freckle. And she had asked me what I thought about putting lift the flaps or like peekaboo flaps into the book, and I was stoked. I had considered this because it's an interactive children's book. I had considered this right from the start, but being a graphic designer, I thought that adding this in was going to be a barrier to entry to get the book published because of cost. So I was delighted that she suggested that, and we worked together for I think about a month quite intensively to make changes to the story and tweaks to accommodate the Lift the Flap series and change the cover artwork and slightly modify the story to be a little bit better. I had never worked with an editor before. I didn't quite know what I was in for or what to expect, but Nikki was fabulous. So what I really enjoyed about working with the editor is that I never at any point felt cornered or like I had to do something. It was a really collaborative vibe. She'd make a suggestion, and if I wasn't happy with it, I'd express that and she would respect that, and vice versa. So it was a really beautiful experience working with the editor, and I am so happy with the changes. I think that it just elevated my already good story into an even better story. And so then I had probably the longest feeling weight on my hands ever. I finished the artwork in January, and then it was published in July, which is a really tight turnaround from what I understand in the publishing industry. Like remarkable, amazing, great. But because I hadn't experienced that and I have a relatively short attention span and a problem with patience, it was probably the longest 6 months of my life. It was all worth it when I got to unbox my book, Thank You for Feeding Freckle. I made a video of myself unboxing this video, which I will link above and below. Earlier I said that I'd show you some of the comparisons between the pages, and I'll do that for you now. This here is Feeding Neptune, the very first edition mock-up of the book that I did, and then here is the published version. So as you can see, I'll put them side by side. The house has evolved quite a bit since the first time. On this page here, you can see that flower pot that was in my very first initial concept has now become a Lift the Flap series. The fonts changed, the colours changed, so there was a lot in the printing process that I didn't realise. For example, having white text wasn't an option, it had to be black. This is from the first version of Feeding Neptune, and then it's evolved to this with a door. So as you can see, the integrity of the original is largely there, and just small little tweaks in the editing process to get it better. One of the biggest changes from the first book to the published is this here, where I had coloured bowls for the cats, and then it turned into this one here where there's a big peekaboo flap there. But as you can see, it's really nicely evolved from the first edition. This is the last change that I'll show you. If there's any interest in it, I can do a whole video on it. Just let me know in the comments. This here is Feeding Neptune edition 1. You can see very similar, just a few changes. The biggest change was to the cover. Original cover versus published cover. This was something that was agreed on with the editor. 5 Mile, of course, knows how to sell books, and I was happy to take their lead on a cover design in order to make sure that my book was seen on the shelves. I really appreciated their professional opinion on this. I think that's about it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments and I'll happily answer them for you. I spent a lot of time on YouTube searching how to become traditionally published, what to expect. There wasn't that much advice around, so if you are looking to be traditionally published or you're going through the process, please feel free to reach out to me so I can pass on some of my knowledge and experience. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe using the button below, hit the notifications bell if you would like to hear of upcoming videos, and if you would like to purchase a copy of Thank You for Feeding Freckle, which is suitable for children between 2 and 6 years old, you can do so at Whitcoulls if you're in New Zealand. I will link all these links below. Booktopia if you're in Australia, which I'll link below, and Book Depository if you're anywhere else in the world. You can check out Thank You for Feeding Freckle on Goodreads. I am now in the process of designing and writing book number 2, so watch this space. Thank you again for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!